Hello everyone. Today I am going to present our paper on multimodal learning of editing source code. My name is Untitled Chakraborty and I am a final year PhD candidate at Computer Science Department in Columbia University. Software engineers change or edit their code for different purposes. Sometimes they edit code for adding new features to the existing code. Sometimes they edit code for bug fixing. Sometimes also they edit code for refactoring, etc. In this paper, we propose a multimodal technique for automating source code editing. We call our technique MODIT. Before moving on to the details of our techniques, let us look at some of the intuitions behind MODIT. A piece of code can be changed in many different ways. For instance, in this example, the array list can be replaced either with linked list or with hash set. And depending on the need of the developer, both edit can be correct patches. However, when we look at what the developer wants in the form of a text, we can understand that the linked list is the correct replacement for the array list. Thus, the guidance from the developer can be a very important hint for generating edited code. Further, if we look at this code snippet from the guidance, we get a hint that there should be a check for empty object. But which object we should check for, we have no clue. However, if we look at the context of the edit, we get an idea that the JSON object should be checked for being empty. Thus, the context could be a major help for finding code elements while synthesizing the patch. In fact, while synthesizing the edited code, existing ingredient from both the context and the guidance could help immensely to the synthesizer. With these intuitions, we built a multimodal code editing engine, MODIT, which works on 3 different modalities. Our first modality is the code that needs to be edited. Our second modality is the context of the code edit. And our third modality is the guidance or a description of the code edits in the form of a text. We solve this problem as an encoder-decoder based method. First, we concatenate the inputs as a sequence and feed the concatenated input to an encoder. Then we use a decoder to generate the edited code. More specifically, given 3 input modalities, we concatenate them and then tokenize them into a sequence of tokens. Then we use a transformer-based encoder-decoder model to generate the edited code. After the decoder, we take the decoder output and do the post-processing to generate the finally edited code. Now, let us move on to the experiments of MODIT. We evaluated MODIT on 2 different datasets. These datasets are proposed by Tufano et al. At their ICSE 2019 paper. Since getting real textual guidance for evaluation purpose is difficult, we used commit message as a surrogate for the guidance. Our first research question is, how accurately does MODIT generate edited code with respect to other techniques? Here we see different encoder-decoder based models for such code editing. We use namely LSTM, 2 different size transformer, and our previous approach CodeIt, which is a syntax guided encoder-decoder based approach. All of these techniques, the model is trained from scratch. In addition to this, we evaluated using some large-scale pre-trained models. This model supposedly learns the general purpose representation of source code from large collection of source code data. In particular, we evaluated CodeBERT, Graph CodeBERT, CodeGPT, and finally in MODIT, we use PLBART as our pre-trained model. As we can see in the result, MODIT with PLBART results in the best performance of all. Now, let us discuss the difference between CodeBERT, CodeGPT, PLBART to understand why MODIT with PLBART results in the best performance. BERT is a pre-trained encoder. So while using BERT for encoder-decoder setting, the decoder is randomly initialized. That is, the decoder is trained from the scratch. GPT, on the other hand, is a pre-trained left-to-right decoder. There is no encoder in GPT. Thus, GPT model does not understand the input bidirectionally like the BERT does. Finally, in PLBART, both the encoder and the decoder are pre-trained. Thus, PLBART learns to understand the input in a bidirectional fashion and learns to generate the output as part of their pre-training objective. So the first takeaway points from research question 1 is that the transformer can learn the syntax of the code. As we can see here, that transformers are robust enough to learn the syntax without explicit syntactic supervision. Thus, the transformer models outperform our previous baseline coded model. The second takeaway point here is the pre-trained model improves the performance. As we can see that there is a major improvements in the pre-trained model block than the models that are trained from scratch. And last but not the least, we also see that the multimodality improves code editing performance irrespective of what pre-trained model we use. As we can see, no matter what model we use, when you use multimodal data, it always improves the performance. In our next research questions, we evaluated the effect of 3 different modalities. If we remove the context from the MODIT's pipeline, the performance decreases from full MODIT. If we remove the guidance, the performance also decreases. And if we remove both the context and the guidance, the performance decreases even more. We did another experiment where we only took the context. This settings is similar to the sequencer proposed by Chen et al. At their TSC 2019 paper. Even there, we see that the guidance actually improves the performance quite a bit. Now, let us look at some of the qualitative examples similar to the ones we saw at the beginning of this talk. As we can see here, without the guidance, MODIT generates an incorrect patch. However, with the guidance, MODIT predicts the patch correctly. In this example, MODIT generates a wrong patch without the context. MODIT is able to generate the right patch with the context since the variable for the right patch, that is the variable sent, is present in the context. With these results, we conclude that both the guidance and the context are necessary to successfully generate edited code. Finally, we investigate what is the best strategy to encode multiple input modalities. In MODIT, we simply concatenate all 3 inputs as a sequence and use one and only one encoder to encode such sequence. An alternative approach could be using 3 different encoders to encode all 3 different input modalities. This approach is similar to what Rosalia Tufano et al. Proposed at their ICSE 2021 paper. We did 2 experiments to understand the effect of the number of encoder. First, we use all 3 input modalities and use 3 different encoders for each. As we can see, the single encoder results in the best performance. Second, we take just the code before the edit, as that is the EP, and the guidance, that is G. As we use two different encoders to encode each different modalities. As from the result, we see that when we use one encoder, the result is improved. Now let us look why the reason behind such improvement. As we know, transformer models learns representations with attention between all tokens in the input. When we use different encoders for different inputs, it can learn only within the input. For instance, here x1 only depends on x2 and y1 only depends on y2. There is no interaction between x1 and x's and y's. However, when you use one single encoder for all input modalities, x1 does not only depend on x2 but also on y1 and y2. Thus, we conclude the single encoder that encodes all the input modalities learns better representation, since they can interact with other modalities. So to summarize, our key findings in these papers are: multimodal input improves code editing capability. Transformer models are robust enough to learn code syntax. Adding context in the input helps models select appropriate identifiers. Adding textual guidance helps guiding the source code editing. Pre-trained encoder-decoder improves automated code editing performance, and PLBART is the best suited pre-trained model yet for automated source code editing. And using single encoder to encode multimodalities result in the better performance than using separate encoders for each individual modality. More details of our investigation result and our code are available in these links. And also, I am expecting to graduate in summer 2022. I am in the academic job market this year. Please reach out to me for hiring. Details of my research can be found in my webpage, and my Twitter handle is SAIKATCH107. Thank you for attending the talk, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.